you and welcome back to the show. This is where we'll be going straight to the big story. Today we shall be taking a look at brain drain. Of course, the brain drain in Nigeria is the exodus of middle class and highly skilled Nigerians, which has been occurring in waves since the late 1980s up till 1990s. This trend was initially restructured to certain professionals but has now become free for all with the introduction of visa programs in order to fill the workforce gaps in developed nations. This was also has sparked by many economic downturn following a period of economic boom in the 1970s and 1980s, propelled by discovery of oil wells in Nigeria. Today on the show, we'll be taking a look at it by Dr. Uche Ewelike, and we are talking about medical tourism and brain drain in Nigeria's health sector. It's my pleasure. Thank you for joining us. You can join this show live on your Facebook page. Follow at the Nigeria Watch, or also watch us on our YouTube channel at BRTV TStv live, and share the button. So we're going straight to the conversation. You have a chance to be part of the program. 0907 177 1985. Let's start by asking, what is a brain drain as it has to do with the health sector?
Well, you've given the definition of brain drain, but let's look at it from the practical point of view. It's just a left shift of health workers from one country, probably where they're trained, to another climate and environment where they consider more conducive and more favorable for them to practice. But then, I would want us to look at it before we look at the causes, and we'll look at the consequences if this issue and the rate at which this brain drain is continuing, if it is not abated. You know, the health market is not a competitive market, just like every other market where you go in, buy things and come out. It's not, because there is no free entry, there is no free exit. So you need a minimum of 6 years, it's being equal, to train a doctor, and a minimum of 5 years to train a pharmacist or a laboratory scientist, and a minimum of 3 years to train a nurse. So these are critical workforce required. And for you to get a specialist or a doctor, you need additional 5 years. So you are looking at an average of 4 years. So it's not like you wake up today, you get doctors into the health workforce, or you get nurses or pharmacists or laboratory scientists to put into the health workforce. So because of this difficulty, what we call no free entry, no free exit, unlike what you have in ordinary market, where you can go and learn a trade today, next tomorrow, if you have the access to funding, you can start. Yeah. It is not like that in the health sector, because you need to build the critical experience required to render those services, because we are looking at issues that have to do with life and well-being of people. Now, if this is not controlled, people said, well, brain drain may end up giving brain gain. Beautiful, that's a good concept. But you look at the health sector, at this period where we're having excess of people, a lot of people are suffering the consequences
Of this
brain drain.
This movement.
This movement, yes. What we call the left shift of health workers.
Yes, the left shift of health workers.
Now, a lot of people are suffering the consequences. Until it stopped or reduced, more people will move and less health workers. Look at Nigeria, for instance.
Okay.
The WHO recommendation for doctor to population ratio is 1 to 600 people population. One doctor per 600 population.
Okay.
But what we have in Nigeria is about 1 doctor to 5,000 population. So this is a huge gap. And this explains why in the recent time you are seeing doctors collapse in the theater, doctors finish very serious ward rounds, starting from morning to evenings, and they're also admitted in because of the stress and because of too much work required to be done. Because when there is a need for health services, people must go and look for how they can get their problems solved if it requires medical intervention. So whether there are doctors, whether there are pharmacists, whether there are lab scientists or not in the hospital, people must be there. And this puts a lot of pressure on the little workforce we have. Now, it has quality consequences, because the doctor who is fatigued may not give optimal care. And that also affects the output in the health sector. But looking at that, people are now asking, why are we having this left shift or movement of health workforce
from Nigeria to other countries?
Yes, from Nigeria. Let me also let you understand that Nigerian health workers are well trained, and that explains why there are more for all over the world. The number one factor that is affecting why people move from one environment to the other, especially from Nigeria to developed economies or some developing economies where they believe that the conditions are better, is remuneration. I want to give you a clear-cut example. A doctor in training.
Okay, just before you do that, let me quickly call for a short breakdown where we'll be opening the phone line so you can be part of the program. We're going to rejoin Dr. Ewelike. Just stay with us. Let's go for a second and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Getting your TStv decoder just got easier. Simply log on to www.tstvafrica.shop. Select any item of your choice by clicking on Add to Cart. Click on Proceed to check out to make payment. For new users, fill in the required billing details. Check the website terms and condition box to agree. Click on Place Order. Click on Make Payments. On the payment page, fill in your card details. Confirm the amount and click Pay. You can also pay via USSD, bank transfer and other payment platforms. Order your TStv decoder now and get it delivered to your doorstep.
Thank you very much for being there. We are taking a look at medical tourism and brain drain in Nigeria's health sector. We have Dr. Uche who is taking us through why Nigerian doctors have to follow suit in what looks like a mass exodus of doctors from Nigeria to other countries. Dr. Ewelike, you've established the background. Now let's take a look at some of the basic problems, because we know there's a problem. Because, apart from better life and living, are Nigerian doctors well remunerated? To the point that there is no need going to another country, and if not, why?
The UK earns about 21 million and you earn about 5.6 million. When you look at that, it is quite attractive for you to begin to consider, do I move or do I continue to stay? But then, that is not to say that the remuneration as it concerns here in Nigeria, and looking at our purchasing power parity, it's not good enough. But the difference is what is causing the movement. The next factor, which I consider very critical, is the issue of a practice environment, work environment,
okay,
and job satisfaction.
Okay.
See, when somebody leaves medical school, either as a pharmacist or as a doctor or as a laboratory scientist or whatever, you want to practice to the zenith of your career. You want to have that environment where you can be able to impact life and say you've made a mark in your profession. So those basic amenities that are required for optimal practice are not made available for people, more especially those who are not working in city centers and those who work in the remote areas where we have the larger population of the country. Now, this work environment is not conducive, so people look at it. For instance, let me give you a clear-cut example.
Okay.
In the whole of Abuja and the states within Abuja, there is no single PET scan. Now, if you're an oncologist, yes, PET scan.
For animals?
No, PET scan that enables you, if people have cancer, if you're an oncologist, you have people who have cancers, you want to know whether they are sprayed, the level of spread or not. In the whole of Abuja and its environs, there's no single PET scan. Now, if you're an oncologist who would want to excel and make proper diagnosis and be the best in the world, you see, you are being limited because of the practice environment.
Okay.
So that also affects your output. In all other subspecialties in medicine and the paramedicals, these are also affecting them. And when people look at that and compare the practice environment outside here, the practice environment outside here, it looks a bit more conducive. Okay. And people would want to move in there to be able to get to the zenith of their career and excel in the medical field. Now, just of recent, based on my non-empirical studies I've done with some colleagues who have moved to outside the country is this issue of insecurity.
Okay.
You know, people are looking at the concentration in the urban centers. There are a lot of doctors who are also practicing in rural communities where this insecurity is paramount. And when doctors look at their safety, it's not guaranteed.
They run away.
They look at that as a factor why they should leave.
Exactly.
And when their services and their skills are sought all over the world, they have no option than to move out of the country.
So where is the role of the government in all of this? Do we have as much infrastructure over the years, since we had democracy in 1999 till date, such that will attract doctors not to want to travel out of this country? Is there any reason good enough? What has changed over time?
Yes, what needs to change?
Yes.
What needs to change
Okay.
is the funding of the health sector. It will help a lot to retain our health workforce, because when the health sector is properly funded, most of those things I've mentioned, things like practice environments, equipment required for appropriate diagnosis and treatment, remuneration, work environment, including the macroeconomic environment. This doctor is not existing in silos. You know, this doctor needs good schools for his children. This scientist needs good schools for his children. Likewise, the pharmacists and the nurses. So they need an environment where the macroeconomy is also conducive for them to exist. Now, but from the side of government intervention, is actively involved now on the issue of funding. We need to fund the health sector to be able to match and stop the movement of people out of the country. Let me give you an instance. There is a recommendation made by African heads of state in 2001 here in Abuja, which is called the famous Abuja Declaration, which said that African heads of states had an agreement that we should fund the health sector all over Africa, including Nigeria, with not less than 15% budgetary allocation to health. Retrospectively look at this over time, including this fiscal year, Nigeria has not gone beyond 5.5% budgetary allocation to health. So that's, to it, has a way of limiting funding into the sector and affecting the output that comes from the health sector.
How does that also affect the rural public health?
Yeah, it does. Even the percentage that is being appropriated in health sector, it's not taking into cognizance the real where the population is. Because there's what we call inverted pyramid spending in the health sector, where we spend more money in the teaching hospitals and the federal medical centers, which take care of the lesser population more than the numerous primary health centers where you have the bulk of your population domiciled. But there is a lot of trends and a lot of interventions, including the earmarked funding of the federal government called the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, that is trying to address those issues. But then we need to step up funding in the health sector. If you compare what happens here and what happens to where our people are going, the disparity, the gap is much. Nigeria has.
How do we close the gaps?
Yes. Let me state the gap before we know how to can close it. UK has a population of about 67 million people. They have a GDP of about $2.7 trillion. Now, with about $42,000 per capita.
42,000
per capita. We have a GDP of about $430 billion with per capita, GDP per capita of about $2,000 per capita. Now, out of this $2.7 trillion, 12% of the GDP, 12% is put in health in the UK. In Nigeria, with of 200 million people and above, we have about $430 billion per GDP, with about $2,000 per capita. We have about less than 3.9% of the GDP that is in the health sector. So you see the gap. And this explains why physical infrastructure, work environment, remuneration are now better in these other climes where people move to. So we need to close this gap. Why do we close this gap? We close this gap by ensuring that we step up budgetary allocation to health. And not just stepping up the budgetary allocation to health. You know, there is clear disparity also between estimates and actuals. I have been a member of the National Health Account in the last 7 years or thereabouts. We've noticed some level of disparity between what is estimated and what is actually released.
Oh.
And now, even when you look at what is actually released, more than 75% of this actual release goes onto the line item budgets, what we consider administrative costs and others, salaries and others.
So the
physical infrastructure
are left to
are not fully taken care of.
And Dr. Uche, let me just also bring to you the fact that with an inflation rate of about 19.6% at the moment, we're going to see more dwindling of the health sector if I stand to be challenged.
Yes,
but the question now is, how do we get the communities, individuals, organizations, private bodies to, in fact, Nigerians in the diaspora to perhaps invest in the health sector to a point that we can actually make money from medical tourism. But we will answer all of that. This is to remind you that you have a chance to be part of the program. The number is 0907-177-1984, 1985, 0907-177-1985. The number is there on your screen, so you can be part of it to be part of the conversation to join us. Dr. Uche Ewelike is taking a look at all of these for us today on the program. He is a senior public health physician and health economist. Moving ahead on the show, would you like to let us into the recently signed into law NHIA, formerly we used to know it as NHIS, National Health Insurance Scheme, President Muhammadu Buhari in a grand occasion signed that act into law. And today you have NHIA, where you have the Director General. What does this mean to the health sector?
Well, this is a big win for the health sector, because over time, let's say in the last 8 or 9 years, there has been a lot of push to repeal the NHIS Act into the NHIA because of the fundamental lacuna that exists in the Act. The most important thing is that all over the world, there are two basic means or a mix that people can fund the health sector. If either you are doing the Beverage model or the Bismarck model. These two models are from the UK, which is an area, a country that most of us copy and look at what best comes from there, and in Germany. Now, it's either people are doing contributions or government is funding the health sector through taxation. Like as it is in the UK, where you have the NHS. NHS in the UK is tax funded. Okay. So you do not make a contribution on a regular basis as it is in other models. But for everything you do, there's a tax that is sent into the NHS. Okay. And that explains why NHS contributes very significantly to the growth and economy of the UK. Today, NHS employs about 1.3 million people, direct employment. Okay. So it has positive correlation into what happens in both economic development and growth. But the beauty is that the Act, the National Health Insurance Authority Act that was signed by Mr. President on the 19th of May 2020, it's heralding a great improvement into what I discussed earlier on the issue of contribution. Now it has made contribution for health insurance mandatory, unlike as it was in the previous act that was repealed.
Who are the beneficiaries?
The beneficiaries are all Nigerians.
When you say all Nigerians, it might surprise you. It also be interesting to note that most Nigerians, about 80%, might be knowing about what you're saying for the first time. So in a layman's term, how would the ordinary Nigerian benefit from the program you just mentioned, the NHIA?
Thank you.
How do they key in? How do they take advantage? How do they benefit? Because these programs exist, but Nigerians are not aware, and that's the essence of this program.
So thank you very much, and I'm so happy that you are looking in this direction and helping to create the awareness, because a principal hallmark of the health system now is to achieve universal health coverage. And one of these things that we are discussing is how do we achieve universal health coverage in Nigeria, where people have access to health care without suffering financial hardship,
Exactly.
irrespective of your socioeconomic condition.
Exactly.
Now, who and who should benefit? The act is explicit that Nigerians, residents, people resident in the country. Now, for every employer of labor, if you have 5 staff and above, it is now mandatory that you must key into insurance. Now, this will take care of the bulk of the population in organized private sector, including formalized employment like at the local government, at the state level, and at the federal level. But for the population that is not captured in either of these, more especially what we consider the vulnerable population, those population that will not be able to contribute or pay, government has set up an earmarked funding, which is not less than 1% of consolidated revenue, what we call the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which is domiciled in the National Health Act of 2014.
Has it been released?
Yes, in fact, the first tranche of the disbursement has been done, second tranche has been disbursement. To be very frank with this administration, they have been very religious in that the disbursement of the fund takes place. Now, what is currently happening is the implementation and operationalization of the fund, because the fund is implemented both on the demand side and also on the supply side. Those are the primary health section, and those are the health insurance section. So now, the Nigerians that will benefit are those who are not able to pay because of their socioeconomic status, will be accommodated through this earmarked funding. But those who are in one form of employment or the other, in organized private sector, provided you have up to 5 staff and above, you must contribute into the pool.
As an organization?
Yes, it is now a must, unlike what it was. As I said earlier, it's either you are funding the health sector through mandatory contribution or through tax-funded contribution. But for us in Nigeria, we are doing a mix of both the tax-funded, which is coming from appropriation from federal government, and contributions with this repeal of the National Health Insurance Scheme Act to National Health Insurance Authority Act. So it is now mandatory that for every organization with 5 staff and above, you must contribute into the health sector. Now, this contribution is put into the common pool, and it will now be taken from there to take care of the few that will be sick, because all of us cannot be sick at the same time. That is the beauty of putting money into a pool, what you call the ability to redistribute the fund. For those who will be sick, the money will be taken from there to take care of that population, because we can't all be sick at the same time.
Thank you so much. Dr. Uche Ewelike is our guest. We're taking a look at medical tourism and brain drain in Nigeria's health sector. We'll be taking your calls, maybe about 1 or 2 calls. The number is 0907 177 1985. Just before we call it a quit on the show, in just 60 seconds, all of this you have discussed makes so much sense. But one thing is left, to the fact that Nigerians need to be aware. And until you had come here, I must also confess that I had no knowledge about some of the things you said, which is the essence of this program. How do we encourage Nigerians to be contributing, to participate in this process of also seeing to it that we have a robust health sector? Let's see who's on the line maybe before you answer that. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Nigeria Watch. Okay, we lost that and we have to let him go. 60 seconds, you may have to say that.
Well, just like you are doing in the media, people need to know the benefit of the health sector wonders, which we call health sector wonders, that was done on the 19th of May by Mr. President, because it's going to revamp the entire health sector and make sure that more fund comes into the health sector. That's also another way of reducing this issue of brain drain and people running out of the country, as we discussed earlier, medical tourism, for basic things that can be handled here, because that's also a way of us to save our naira and ensure that not everything is spent on dollars, because the data we have is that we spend about $2 billion annually on medical tourism. Wow. So if we revamp the entire health sector, we should be able to save this amount of money. This is almost the entire health budget for a year. And we should be able to save this money. So Nigerians need to be aware that it is now mandatory for them to contribute into the health sector through health insurance by the law that was signed by Mr. President. Another very important thing is that we should all be advocates of this through the media, social media, and all both print and electronic media to let people know the importance, because we can't all fold our hands together to allow the health sector collapse.
Exactly.
Because this is one sector that has very strong positive correlation between what we are doing and development, because we need a critical mass of healthy population to build the system we want tomorrow, in terms of all other spheres of life.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That's Dr. Uche Ewelike. He found time to be here with us on the program. We make this a series, so we continue to have you speak to Nigerians. Thank you so much for finding time to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to seeing you subsequently on the program.
Thank you very much.
And to you, get your TStv decoder so you can have all of the fun, entertainment. Let's do this again on Monday, God willing. Have yourself a splendid weekend ahead. Stay out of trouble. Remember to go get your PVC so you can change the whole world around you. Thank you so much for putting all of this together. Albert, I appreciate you. Jerry, thank you for being there. And all of the big guys, my production assistant, Bomire, thank you so much, Abayomi. Thank you, appreciate you. My name is Abasi Odu Idion. You can follow me on your social media space at Absobaba. You know I love you. Good night.